Hey everyone, this year in the IAQ, we've decided that we need to do some charity. And so we've come up with a super simple quilt block that you can sew up in a day. And remember, our goal is to do one quilt block a month. So if you finish it, share it in the community, and that will enter you into a drawing for the monthly giveaways. The quilt block that we've chosen to make our quilt tops out of is the double monkey wrench, I believe, or also known as the churn dash. So this is a great quilt block just for practicing your half square triangles and squaring those up, as well as your seam allowance with the straight strips that you cut into the sections that are the size that you need. So it is a 12.5-inch unfinished quilt block. And we are using a light white background. This can be a white on white or a solid white. It doesn't matter. Kona snow would be also okay. So anything in the white realm. If it has a little polka dot or something cute on it or flowers, that would be fine as well, as long as those don't stand out crazy and are a little overpowering with the background. The darks will go into the four corners with the half square triangles, and a little bit of a lighter fabric will go into the strips. I've chosen blue for mine, but you can choose scrappy if you'd like. Whatever you have on hand is fine. As long as the background is a whitish color, then this can be scrappy inside. If you want to keep your four corners and your four strips the same color, so these could all be red, these could all be green, so they stand out. If you do them too scrappy, then you don't really notice the churn dash or the monkey wrench pattern in it. So this is the quilt block. If you've got any questions, you can ask them in the community. There's a group on the IAQ website, but I cannot wait to see your quilt blocks and how it comes together in the quilt tops. We do have quilt top builders in the group, and they will be constructing the tops when they get a certain amount of quilt blocks mailed to them. So all the instructions you will find in the PDF. Just follow them, share it for your entry to the giveaway, and then drop it in the mail so we can build our charity quilts. I thank you so much for sharing your talent with us, and I'm excited to see your quilt blocks.
Okay, first thing you're going to do is gather your supplies for the double monkey wrench quilt block. So I've got my two 5-inch squares for the dark corners and two 5-inch squares for the background. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to, on the wrong side of the fabric, draw a line from corner to corner, just really lightly with my pencil. I need to sharpen my pencils here. And I'm going to repeat it with the second quilt block. So now when I go to the sewing machine, I'm going to layer these right sides together, the two squares, and I'm going to sew on both sides of that drawn line. I also have my strips ready to go, and I didn't have a full 18-inch strip, so I just have two different strips, which is just fine. So I'm going to lay right sides together, my background with my colored strip, and then I will sew these as well, just down one side with the 1/4-inch seam. And then I'm going to press them open. Okay, so I've got my two strips together, or my strips, and I have two because I didn't have one that was long enough, so I'm just putting two together. And I'm going to sew. Got a big long tail of a thread there. Get that out of the way. I'm just going to sew down the side 1/4-inch seam. when I'm done that, I'm going to sew my half square triangles. And we drew our line earlier, so I just need to make sure these are all lined up. So I'm going to lift my presser foot, pull that out just a little bit. Oops, it's not going in. There we go. So I'm going to be sewing a 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to leave my needle in the down position. And struggling here. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not. Okay. I'm going to line my other 2 squares up and sew on both sides of this drawn line as well. There we go. It is not letting me put the needle down, so I will figure that out in a little bit, but till then, I'm just carefully I think it wants to do a couple back stitches and stay stitches, and I pushed the wrong buttons. So let me get going here again. All right, so when we're to the end, we're just going to snip that off, and then we will cut on that drawn line and press that. Okay, now that I've sewn my triangles, I'm going to just cut on that drawn line. So I have 2 triangles per piece now, and I'm going to press those open. Now that I have them pressed, I press them so the dark, press them to the dark, and then I'm going to square my blocks up to 4.5 inches. So I'm just going to use my block lock ruler and square up my 4 half square triangles. The other side looks pretty good. With any half square triangle block, you will want to square them up. If not, just, make sure that their measurements are what you need it to be. Squaring up takes a little bit more time in the process of it all, but it makes your quilt block put together in the end so much better. So with anything, square up your quilt blocks. I used to not do this because I thought it was a really pain, and I have some not so lovely quilt tops that are never finished because they turned out so bad. Nothing lined up. So when you start having issues with your blocks not lining up, typically it is because you didn't square up your quilt blocks. All right, now that my half square triangles are squared up, I need to cut my strips. So I have 2 sections. If you have a long enough piece for the one section, you're going to only have one section. But for me, I have 2 sections. So they are going to equal 4.5 inches in square. So when you press these, make sure you press to the dark again. And then you can measure them also to make sure that this is equal to 4.5 inches. So this should equal 4.5 inches for the pieces that you have sewn together. And then we're going to cut them into 4.5-inch strips. And we need 4 of them for this quilt block. It's got a little bit left over. And I need 1 more. Wow, that tail is like getting in my way all over the place. Okay, there we go. So I need 1 more here, 4.5. So now I have all of my pieces, and my center is the background as well. For the fabric that I've chosen, I went with a white background, but as you can see, this is a white on white, so it has a little bit of a pattern to it. It's quite fun. I believe it's made by Moda. It's the Grunge. But if you just use a white or white on white for your background, that would be great. I chose the corners to be a dark color, darker than the inside strip, but whatever combination you choose will be fine. This can be a scrappy quilt, so we'll just use the squares that were given and put them together. The thing that makes it good is that they will match because it is the same block. And with this block, you get to practice your half square triangles and a little bit of seam allowance. And here we go. So I'm just laying out the quilt block, and then I will take it over to the sewing machine and sew them into sections. What I'm going to start with is the top 2 quilt sections. So I'm just going to line them up and then stitch right through them, using my 1/4 inch seam allowance as well. I do have a guide on my sewing machine, so that does help. I'm going to take the next 2 sections right below those other 2 and sew them together. So I'm kind of sewing them into rows, but chain piecing so they go a little bit quicker here. When I get to the last one, I'm going to sew the left bottom corner with the middle bottom section. There we go. Once I get to the end, I'm going to grab my pieces and I'm just going to snip off this top one. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to lay my last corner piece in place, right sides together again, and stitch this one down. I'm going to repeat it for the next little section. So everything's staying together at this point so I don't lose my place. This is kind of how I do single quilt blocks. It makes things a lot easier and I don't lose my spot. And the last section here. Make sure it's in the right direction. Okay, and then I'm going to stitch this one down. And then I am going to lift that up because my seam was starting to twist and go to the other side, and I want it to stay in the one direction so it doesn't cause me problems later. I snipped 2 sections off, those top 2. And now you can see they are ready to be sewn together. So I just need to lay them right sides together, line them up. If you need to pin these, go right ahead and pin them. You'll want to make sure that what is connecting here is the nesting seams right here. So this one I'm going to pin. And then this intersection right here, where they're still kind of connected with a piece of thread, I want to pin right there as well. So those are the most important spots. Okay, now I'm going to line this back up again, and then I'm going to sew it down. Make sure that your seams are going the right way. Don't get all switched up. For these intersections, leave the pin in as long as you can, go slowly, and then remove your pin. You can also kind of maneuver those seams so they nest together and lay flat. All right. Gonna readjust just a little bit here. When I get to the end, I'm going to cut my thread, lift it up, and now I'm going to remove that last section. So we have sewn these top two sections, and now we are going to sew the last section on. I'm going to again pin these, and what will happen right here is I've got the previous seam on the top, and I can see that my seam is going this way. So I want to make sure that my seam is going the same direction on this piece. And then so the back piece, which only has, it's not sewn to anything yet, directing the seams, so we can tell it to go to the back. Same with this one, it's going down, so I need this opposite seam to go up, just like that. Gonna kind of wiggle them together so they nest nicely, and then I'm going to pin that in place. If you want to put more pins in that along the line, go right ahead if that makes you more comfortable sewing those together. Oh, my needle down is not working. Okay, just need to adjust that so make sure my seam's going the right way. And then I'm going to make my adjustments here as well. And stick myself with the pin. Okay, I'm going to take that out. You can go over your pins if you go really slow and watch where that needle hits. Make sure you don't hit that pin with that needle. All right, I'm going to make a readjustment and stitch that last one down just like that. All right, snip my threads. I'm going to move my pins out of the way. And my quilt block is done. So now I just need to press it and share it.